The space station floated alone in the dark. Far from any planet or star, it spun slowly in the empty space between worlds. Inside the cold metal walls, Zarathus sat by herself in a small room. She had been alone for so long that she had stopped, counting the days. Zarathus looked like her people, the Veltani. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow softly in the dim light. Her eyes were large and silver like mirrors that reflected everything around her. Her body was thin and graceful, and when she moved, it was like watching water flow. But unlike other Velthani, she was always alone. The Velthani were known across the galaxy as a peaceful people. They could speak to each other with their minds, sharing thoughts and feelings without words. Their world was full of harmony and love. But Zarathus was different. When she tried to use her mind to speak, terrible things happened. She remembered the first time it went wrong. She was just a child, excited to see her parents after a day at school. She reached out with her mind to say hello, the way all Velthani children did. But instead of a gentle touch, her thoughts crashed into their minds like a hammer. Her mother screamed and fell to the ground. Her father's eyes went blank, and he stared at nothing for hours. That was 10 years ago. Since then, she had hurt many people without meaning to. Every time she felt strong emotions, her mind would reach out and grab others. She could see their thoughts, change their memories, and even break their minds if she was not careful. The other Velthani were terrified of her. The Velthani Council had tried to help her. They brought teachers and healers from across their world. They tried medicine and meditation. They tried keeping her calm with peaceful music and beautiful gardens. Nothing worked. Her power only grew stronger. Finally, they made a hard choice. They could not kill her because the Velthani did not believe in violence. But they could not let her stay because she was too dangerous. So they sent her to this research station at the edge of their space. Here she could not hurt anyone else. 2 Velthani scientists lived on the station with her. Dr. Ethelara studied her abilities, trying to find a way to help her control them. Dr. Venthor watched the deep space sensors, looking for any signs of danger from the unknown regions beyond their territory. Both scientists were brave, but they were still afraid of her. They stayed as far away as possible and spoke to her only when they had to. Zarathus understood their fear. She was afraid of herself too. Sometimes, when she was very sad or angry, she could feel her power pushing against the walls of her mind like a caged animal. She spent most of her time in meditation, trying to keep her emotions calm and her thoughts quiet. On this day, she was sitting in her usual spot by the big window that looked out into space. She liked to watch the stars and imagine what it would be like to visit other worlds. Maybe somewhere there were people who would not be afraid of her. Maybe somewhere she could have friends. Suddenly, alarms began to ring throughout the station. Red lights flashed on the walls. Zarathus jumped up, her heart beating fast. The alarms meant danger. Her emotions spiked, and she felt her power start to push outward. She quickly closed her eyes and tried to calm herself. Dr. Venthor's voice came over the station speakers. His mental voice was shaking with fear. Unknown ship approaching. They are not Velthani. They are not from any species we know. Zarathus ran to the control room. Through the big windows, she could see a strange ship coming toward them. It was not like Velthani ships, which were smooth and curved like flowers. This ship was rough and angular, with hard edges and bright lights. It looked like it was built for fighting rather than exploring. Dr. Ethelara and Dr. Venthor were standing together, holding each other's hands for comfort. When they saw Zarathus enter the room, they stepped back. Even in this moment of danger, they were still afraid of her. "What do they want?" Zarathus asked. "We do not know," Dr. Venthor replied. "They sent a message, but we cannot understand their language. They are trying to dock with our station." The strange ship attached itself to the station with a loud clang that shook the walls. Zarathus could hear footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy footsteps, not like the soft steps of the Velthani. The door to the control room opened with a hiss. 4 beings walked in, and Zarathus stared at them, in wonder. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. They stood on 2 legs like the Velthani, but they were shorter and thicker. Their skin was not blue but came in different shades of brown and pink. They had hair on their heads in different colors, and their eyes were small and dark. The one in front was a male with short brown hair and kind eyes. He wore a blue uniform with metal symbols on it. Behind him came a female with long red hair, a male with dark skin and a friendly smile, and another female with yellow hair tied back. The two Velthani scientists moved to hide behind a computer console. Their fear was so strong that Zarathes could feel it even without trying to read their minds. The strange male looked around the room and then focused on Zarathes. When their eyes met, she felt something she had never experienced before. Usually, when she looked at someone, she could sense their thoughts at the edge of her mind. But with this being, there was nothing. His mind was completely closed to her. "Hello," the male said in a voice that was deeper than any Velthani voice. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth ship New Horizon. We received your distress signal." Zarathes blinked in confusion. "Distress signal? We sent no distress signal." Jake looked at his companions. The female with red hair stepped forward. "Our sensors detected an energy surge from this station. It matched the pattern of an emergency beacon." Dr. Venthor spoke up from behind the console, his mental voice barely a whisper. "The energy surge. It happened when the alarm started. When she..." He looked at Zarathes with wide, frightened eyes. Zarathes felt her face grow hot with shame. Her emotional spike when the alarm started must have created an energy wave that these strangers detected as a distress call. Once again, her uncontrolled power had caused problems. "I am sorry," she said, looking down at the floor. "It was my fault. I did not mean to call you here." Jake stepped closer to her, and she automatically took a step back. But he did not seem afraid. Instead, he looked curious. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Zarathes," she replied, still not looking up. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Jake, and these are my friends. This is Dr. Lisa Carter, Tony Walsh, and Amy Brooks." Each of the humans nodded as Jake introduced them. Dr. Carter smiled at her with genuine warmth. Zarathes had not seen a smile like that in years. "What happened here?" Jake asked, looking around the nearly empty station. "Where is everyone else?" The two Velthani scientists exchanged a look of terror. They did not want to explain about Zarathes and her dangerous abilities, but they also did not want to lie to these powerful strangers. Zarathes made the decision for them. If these beings were going to be here, they deserved to know the truth. "They are afraid of me," she said simply. "Everyone is afraid of me. I can hurt people with my mind and I cannot control it. So I live here alone." She waited for the humans to step back in fear, the way everyone else did. But Jake just looked at her with those kind eyes and said something that changed her life forever. "We're not afraid of you, Zarathes, and you don't have to be alone anymore." Zarathes stared at Jake in disbelief. No one had ever said they were not afraid of her. She waited for him to change his mind, to realize what she was and step away like everyone else did. But Jake just stood there, calm and steady. His three companions looked curious too, not frightened. Dr. Carter stepped forward with her scientific equipment in her hands. "May I scan you?" Dr. Carter asked politely. "I study different species, and I would love to learn about your abilities." The two Velthani scientists gasped at this request. Dr. Ethelara quickly spoke up. "No, you must not get too close to her. She is too dangerous. Her mind can destroy yours." Dr. Carter looked at Jake, then back at Zarathes. "Is that true? Will you hurt me if I come closer?" Zarathes felt tears form in her silver eyes. "I do not want to hurt anyone, but when I feel strong emotions, my power reaches out by itself. I cannot stop it." "What if you don't feel strong emotions right now?" Jake asked. "What if you stay calm? Would it be safe then?" Zarathes thought about this. When she meditated and kept her feelings quiet, her power stayed inside her mind. But she had never tested this with strangers before. The risk was too great. "I do not know," she said honestly. "No one has been willing to try." Tony Walsh, the engineer with the friendly smile, laughed softly. Well, we humans are pretty good at trying new things. That's how we got to space in the first place. Amy Brooks, the communications officer, nodded. Our job is to explore and learn about new people. We can't do that if we run away from everything different. Dr. Ethellara and Dr. Venthor looked at the humans like they were crazy. The two Velthani quickly gathered their things and backed toward the door. We will return to Velthara Prime immediately, Dr. Venthor said. We must report this to the council. You strangers can stay here if you wish, but we will not remain near her any longer. The two scientists hurried out of the control room. Soon after, Zarathes heard their small ship detach from the station and fly away. She was used to people leaving her, but it still hurt every time. Jake noticed her sadness. Hey, it's okay. Their fear isn't your fault. Some people need time to understand things that are different. But they are right to be afraid, Zarathes said. I have hurt people before. I killed my own parents when I was young. The humans became quiet at this confession. But instead of backing away, Dr. Carter sat down in a nearby chair and looked at her with gentle eyes. Will you tell us what happened? She asked. Sometimes talking about painful memories can help. Zarathes had never told anyone the full story. The Velthani Council knew the basic facts, but she had never explained how it felt or what really happened. Something about these humans made her want to share. She sat down across from Dr. Carter and began to speak. I was 15 years old. I had been at school learning about our history. I was excited to go home and tell my parents what I had learned. When I saw them in our garden, I reached out with my mind to share my happiness. She paused, remembering that terrible day. But my excitement was too strong. Instead of a gentle mental touch, my thoughts crashed into their minds like a wave. I could not control it. My mother screamed and fell down. My father just stood there with empty eyes. Jake, Tony, and Amy listened without judgment. Dr. Carter made notes on her tablet, but her face showed compassion, not just scientific interest. My mother died that night, Zarathes continued. The damage to her mind was too great. My father lived for 3 more days, but he never spoke again. He did not recognize me or anyone else. On the 3rd day, his mind simply stopped working. I'm so sorry, Jake said quietly. That must have been terrible for you. The council tried to help me after that. They brought many teachers and healers. They tried everything they could think of. But my power only grew stronger as I got older. Every time I felt fear or anger or sadness, I would accidentally hurt someone else. Dr. Carter looked up from her notes. What does it feel like when your power activates? Zarathes thought about how to explain it. It is like having a river inside my mind. Most of the time I can keep it dammed up and controlled, but when my emotions get strong, the dam breaks and the river floods out into everyone around me. And you can read thoughts and change memories? Tony asked. Yes, but I do not want to. When my power reaches out, I see things I should not see. Private thoughts, painful memories, secret fears. And sometimes if I am very upset, I can accidentally change what I see. I might erase a memory or replace it with something else. Amy looked thoughtful. That's why your people are afraid. Mental privacy is probably very important to them. It is everything to them, Zarathes agreed. Velthani society is built on trust and shared thoughts. What I do breaks that trust completely. Dr. Carter stood up and walked closer to Zarathes. May I try something? I want to test whether you can sense my thoughts. Zarathes felt nervous. I do not want to hurt you. I understand the risk, Dr. Carter said, but you said your power only activates when you have strong emotions. Right now you seem calm. Can you try to gently reach out toward my mind, just to see what happens? Zarathes looked at Jake. He nodded encouragingly. We trust you to be careful. Taking a deep breath, Zarathes slowly let her mental awareness extend toward Dr. Carter. She was ready to pull back immediately if she felt her power getting too strong. But something amazing happened. When her mind touched the edge of Dr. Carter's thoughts, she felt nothing. It was like trying to grab water with her hands. The human's mind was there, but Zarathus could not connect to it. "I cannot read you," she said in wonder. "Your mind is closed to me completely." Dr. Carter smiled widely. "That's incredible. Jake, let her try with you." Jake stepped forward without fear. Zarathus reached out toward his mind and got the same result. His thoughts were completely protected from her abilities. "How is this possible?" Zarathus asked. Dr. Carter was taking rapid notes on her tablet. "I have a theory. Human minds evolved differently than yours. We had to survive in a violent world where we were always in danger. Our minds learned to protect themselves by building natural barriers." Tony laughed. "You mean our paranoia and stubbornness actually help us?" "In a way, yes," Dr. Carter said. "Human thoughts are chaotic and compartmentalized. We don't have the open, harmonious mental structure that your people do. That openness makes you vulnerable to mental attacks, but it also makes you naturally telepathic." Zarathus felt hope growing in her chest for the first time in years. "You mean I cannot hurt you at all?" "Try it," Jake said. "Get angry or scared. See what happens." Amy looked worried. "Are you sure that's safe?" "We'll find out," Jake said, with a grin. Zarathus thought about all the pain and loneliness she had endured over the past 10 years. She thought about her dead parents and her life in exile. She let herself feel the anger and sadness she usually kept locked away. Her power exploded outward like it always did when her emotions peaked. She felt it crash against the minds of the 4 humans around her. But instead of entering their thoughts and causing damage, her power simply bounced off them like light reflecting from a mirror. The humans remained standing and alert. None of them collapsed or screamed or stared with empty eyes. They were completely unaffected. Zarathus began to cry, but for the first time in years, they were tears of joy. "I cannot hurt you," she whispered. "I cannot hurt you at all." Jake sat down beside her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. The physical contact was something she had not experienced in a decade. "You're not a monster, Zarathus. You're just someone who needed to find the right people to be around." Dr. Carter was excited about the discovery. "This changes everything. If humans are naturally immune to your abilities, we can study them safely. Maybe we can even help you learn to control them." "But why would you want to help me?" Zarathus asked. "I am nothing to you, just a stranger from another species." Tony smiled. "That's what humans do. We help people who need help. It doesn't matter if they're from Earth or from across the galaxy." Amy nodded. "Besides, you're not nothing. You're amazing. Do you realize how powerful your abilities are? In the right situation, you could probably save thousands of lives." Save lives. Zarathus had never thought of her power as something that could help people. "How?" Jake looked serious. "There are bad people in the galaxy, Zarathus. People who hurt others and conquer worlds. Someone with your abilities could stop them." Before Zarathus could respond, Amy's communication equipment started beeping urgently. She quickly checked her readings and her face went pale. "Jake, we're getting emergency signals from multiple Velthani colonies. Something is attacking them. The signals they're calling for help, but then they just stop." Dr. Carter looked at her scanner readings from Zarathus. "These mental abilities, they might be exactly what we need to fight whatever is out there." Zarathus felt fear growing in her chest, but for the first time it was not fear of herself. It was fear for her people. What kind of enemy could make entire colonies go silent? Jake stood up and looked out at the stars. "The kind that your people have never faced before. The kind that might need someone like you to stop them." The emergency signals kept coming. Amy's equipment filled with distress calls from Velthani colonies across 3 star systems. But every signal had the same terrifying pattern, a cry for help, followed by sudden silence. "Play one of the messages," Jake ordered. Amy pressed a button and a panicked Velthani voice filled the control room. "This is Colony 7. We are under attack by unknown ships. They are not using weapons. They are doing something to our minds. Our people are collapsing. They are taking control of us. Please send help before they—" The message cut off abruptly. The silence that followed was more frightening than any scream. Zarathus felt her power stirring as fear and anger rose inside her. But this time she did not try to suppress it. The humans around her were safe, and for the first time in her life, she could let herself feel without worrying about hurting someone. "We have to help them," she said. Dr. Carter was studying the signal patterns on her equipment. "Jake, look at this. The energy readings from these attacks show massive psychic interference. Whatever is attacking the Velthani is using mental powers to control them." Tony checked his engineering displays. No physical damage to any of the colonies. All the buildings and technology are intact. It's like the attackers only wanted the people. "Mind control," Jake said grimly. "Someone is conquering the Velthani by taking over their thoughts." Amy received another transmission, this one from Velthara Prime itself. The voice was that of the Velthani Council leader, and it was shaking with fear. "To any ships in this sector, this is the Velthani High Council. We are facing an enemy unlike any we have encountered. They call themselves the Kethmori. They do not destroy our worlds. They enslave our minds. Our peaceful nature makes us defenseless against their attacks." The message paused, and they could hear arguing in the background. When the council leader spoke again, his voice was filled with desperation. "We know there are humans at Research Station Omega with the exile Zarathus. We formally request your assistance. We will discuss payment and terms later. Please, our entire species faces extinction." The transmission ended. Zarathus stared at the communication device in shock. "They asked for my help. The council has never asked for my help with anything, because they never faced anything like this before," Jake said. "Your people are telepathic and peaceful. They probably can't even imagine fighting a mental battle." Dr. Carter looked up from her analysis. "But you can, Zarathus. Your abilities aren't just telepathy, they're weapons designed for exactly this kind of fight." Before anyone could respond, new alarms started ringing throughout the station. This time they were not false alarms caused by Zarathus's emotions. Tony ran to the sensor controls and his face went white. Multiple ships approaching fast. Configuration unknown. Energy signatures matched the patterns from the colony attacks. Through the main window they could see dark shapes moving against the stars. The ships were ugly and twisted like metal that had been melted and reformed into nightmare shapes. They moved in perfect formation, heading straight for the research station. "They're coming for me," Zarathus realized. Someone told them about me. Jake was already moving toward the door. "Tony, get our ship ready for combat. Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need reinforcements immediately. Lisa, keep studying those energy patterns." "What about me?" Zarathus asked. Jake turned back to look at her. "You're going to do what you were born to do. You're going to fight." The first Kethmori ship attached itself to the station with a sound like breaking bones. Zarathus could hear them cutting through the outer hull. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors, but these footsteps made no sound. It was like the creatures were moving through her mind instead of through the station. "They're already trying to control us," Dr. Carter warned, checking her instruments. "I'm reading massive psychic activity. They're searching for our minds." Zarathus could feel it too. Something dark and hungry was pressing against her thoughts, trying to find a way inside. It felt like cold fingers reaching into her skull. But when the Kethmori touched her mind, she felt something she had never experienced before. Another being's mental power that was actually weaker than her own. "I can feel them," she said with growing confidence. "They're strong, but not stronger than me." The first Kethmori appeared in the corridor outside the control room. It was a horror that hurt to look at. The creature had once been something else, maybe even humanoid, but it had been changed by the mental parasites that controlled it. Its eyes glowed with an alien intelligence, and its movements were jerky and unnatural. Behind it came more creatures. Some looked like they had once been Velthani, with blue skin now turned gray and silver eyes that had gone completely black. Others were from species Zarathus did not recognize. All of them moved with the same horrible puppet-like motion. "They're not individuals anymore," Dr. Carter realized. "They're all being controlled by the same group mind." The Kethmori entered the control room and stopped when they saw the humans. Zarathes could feel their confusion, as their mental attacks had no effect on Jake and his crew. The creatures had never encountered minds they could not dominate, but then they turned their attention to Zarathes, and she felt their hunger. They recognized her power and wanted to claim it for themselves. The lead creature spoke, but its voice came from everywhere at once, as if the air itself was talking. "The strong one will join us, the weak ones will serve us. Submit now and your death will be painless." "I don't think so," Zarathes said, and for the first time in her life she let her power loose with intention instead of accident. Her mental force crashed into the Kethmori like a tsunami. She felt their group consciousness recoil in shock and pain. The creatures in the control room stumbled backward, their synchronized movements becoming clumsy and confused. But there were many of them, and they quickly adapted. More Kethmori poured into the room, and their combined mental pressure began to push back against Zarathes's attack. "There are too many," she said through gritted teeth. "I can hurt them, but I cannot defeat them all alone." Jake stepped up, beside her, pulling out a weapon Zarathes had never seen before. "You're not alone." The humans opened fire with their strange weapons while Zarathes continued her mental assault. She discovered that when the Kethmori were distracted by physical attacks, their mental defenses weakened. She could reach deeper into their group consciousness and cause real damage. "It's working," Dr. Carter shouted over the sound of gunfire. "When you disrupt their mental connection, they lose coordination." Zarathes focused on the link between the creatures and their controlling intelligence. She could feel the alien mind behind them, ancient, cruel, and utterly convinced of its own superiority. It had conquered dozens of species over thousands of years, and it had never met resistance like this. She pushed deeper, following the mental connection back to its source. What she found made her gasp. The true Kethmori were not the controlled creatures fighting in the room. They were something far worse, disembodied intelligences that existed only as pure thought, traveling from world to world and taking over entire populations. "They're parasites," she told the others. "The real enemy isn't even here, these are just their slaves." "Can you track them back to their source?" Jake asked, while reloading his weapon. Zarathes concentrated harder than she ever had before. She felt her consciousness stretch across space, following the psychic trail back through the darkness between stars. There, hiding in the shadow of a dead moon, she found them. The true Kethmori existed as a cluster of pure mental energy, feeding off the life force of their conquered slaves. They were planning to use the enslaved Velthani as soldiers to conquer the next species and the next, until the entire galaxy served them. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had never encountered a mind that could fight back on their own level. Zarathes gathered all her power and struck directly at the source. Across the vast distance of space, she felt the alien intelligence scream in shock and rage. For the first time in millennia, the Kethmori felt pain. The controlled creatures in the station immediately collapsed as their connection was severed. But Zarathes knew this was only a temporary victory. The Kethmori would recover and return with greater force. "We hurt them," she said, breathing heavily from the effort. "But they will come back stronger. They know about me now, and they will not underestimate me again." Jake helped her stand up. "Then we'll be ready for them, and we'll make sure you're not fighting alone." Amy was receiving new transmissions from across Velthani space. "The attacks have stopped. The colonies are reporting that the controlled Velthani are waking up, but they're confused and frightened." Dr. Carter was analyzing the energy readings from Zarathes's attack. "This is incredible. You just sent a psychic pulse across multiple star systems. The power levels are off any scale I know how to measure." Zarathes looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in the darkness ancient enemies were planning their revenge. But for the first time in her life, she was not afraid of her own power. She had friends who could stand beside her without fear, and she had a purpose greater than herself. "They want to enslave every thinking being in the galaxy," she said, "but they chose the wrong species to start with." 3 weeks later, the research station had become a war command center. Ships from both Earth and Velthera Prime surrounded it like a protective shell. The alliance between humans and Velthani was growing stronger every day, but it was an alliance, born from desperation. Zarathus stood in the main strategy room studying star maps with military leaders from both species. She looked different now. The fear and shame that had haunted her for years were gone, replaced by determination and purpose. She wore a special headset that Dr. Carter had designed to help her focus her abilities without losing control. Admiral Kate Bishop from Earth. Command was explaining the tactical situation to the group. The Kethmori have taken 17 more Velthani colonies in the past week. Each attack is more coordinated than the last. They're learning from our resistance. Elder Silthan from the Velthani Council looked tired and worried. His people had never faced a real war before, and the stress was showing. Our evacuation ships cannot move fast enough. Every day we lose more of our people to their mind control. Jake pointed to a section of the star map where several red markers showed recent enemy activity. They're forming a pattern. Look at the colonies they've hit. They're all along major trade routes. They're trying to cut off communication between Velthani worlds. Dr. Carter had been working non-stop to understand the enemy's abilities. She looked up from her research tablet with new information. I've analyzed the psychic energy patterns from the latest attacks. The Kethmori are adapting to Zarathus's interference. They're developing ways to shield their controlled slaves from her mental strikes. Zarathus felt frustration growing inside her. Every time she learned to fight them more effectively, they found new ways to resist her. They're using our own tactics against us. When I disrupt their group mind, they split into smaller units that are harder to track. Tony Walsh had been studying the enemy ship designs. Their technology is getting more advanced too. The latest ships have some kind of psychic amplifiers that boost their mind control range. A single ship can now dominate an entire city. Admiral Bishop turned to Zarathus. What we need is a way to strike at their source directly. Can you track them back to their main base again? Zarathus closed her eyes and extended her mental awareness across space, searching for the familiar feeling of Kethmori consciousness. But where before she had found them easily, now there was only empty darkness. They're hiding from me, she said with frustration. They've learned to mask their mental signature. I can still sense them when they're actively controlling someone, but when they're just waiting and planning, they're invisible. Elder Silthan spoke up with a worried voice. There is something else we must discuss. Some of our people are beginning to blame Zarathus for bringing this war to us. They say that if she had not used her powers so strongly, the Kethmori would never have noticed our species. Jake's face darkened with anger. That's not fair, and they know it. The Kethmori were already attacking Velthani colonies before they knew about her. Fear makes people look for someone to blame, Admiral Bishop said sadly. It's a human trait too. When we're scared, we often turn on the people trying to help us. Zarathus felt a familiar sadness creeping into her heart. Even when she tried to save her people, some of them still saw her as a danger. But this time, she did not let the sadness control her. Let them blame me if it helps them feel better, she said quietly. I know what I have to do and I know who my real friends are. Dr. Carter smiled at her with pride. That's growth, Zarathus. 3 weeks ago, you would have believed their blame was justified. Amy Brooks ran into the strategy room with urgent news. We're receiving a transmission from the Kethmori. They want to talk. Everyone gathered around the main communication screen as the transmission came through. The image that appeared was disturbing. It looked like a Velthani, but its eyes were completely black and its movements were wrong. When it spoke, multiple voices came out at once, creating an eerie harmony that made everyone uncomfortable. Greetings to the humans and their pet psychic. We are the Kethmori, and we offer you terms for surrender. Admiral Bishop stepped forward. We don't negotiate with slavers. The controlled Velthani tilted its head in an unnatural way. Slavers? We prefer the term liberators. We free lesser minds from the burden of individual thought. Under our guidance, entire species achieve perfect unity and purpose. You mean you turn them into puppets? Jake said with disgust. We offer the same gift to humanity, The voices continued. Your minds are interesting, chaotic and difficult to penetrate, but not impossible. Submit now and we will allow you to retain some individuality within our collective consciousness. Zarathes stepped into view of the communication screen. And what about me? What do you offer to someone whose mind you cannot control? The controlled Velthani's face changed, showing an expression of hunger and desire. Ah, the broken one. You will join us willingly, or we will break your mind piece by piece until nothing remains but our will. Your power will serve us. As all, power must. I have a better idea, Zarathes said calmly. Why don't you try to take me right now? Before anyone could stop her, she reached out through the communication link with her mental power. She followed the transmission back to its source and struck at the consciousness controlling the Velthani speaker. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The controlled Velthani on the screen screamed and collapsed. Sparks flew from communication equipment on both sides of the transmission. When the screen cleared, they could see the Velthani slowly getting up, confused, but free. Did you just free someone through a communication link? Dr. Carter asked in amazement. The Kethmori made a mistake, Zarathes explained. They opened a direct mental connection to threaten us. I used that connection to attack them. Elder Silthan looked at her with new respect. That was incredibly dangerous. If they had been ready for your attack, they could have used the same link to control you. But they weren't ready, Jake said with pride. Because they still don't understand what they're dealing with. Admiral Bishop was already making new plans. If you can free their controlled slaves through direct contact, we can build a strategy around that. We just need to get you close enough to the enemy ships. Over the next several days, they developed new tactics that combined human military technology with Zarathes's psychic abilities. Human ships would engage the Kethmori vessels in traditional combat, while Zarathes used the battle confusion to strike at the controlling intelligences. The first test of their new strategy came when the Kethmori attacked Colony 12. As soon as the enemy ships appeared, the combined human Velthani fleet moved to intercept them. Zarathes was aboard Jake's ship, the New Horizon, wearing an advanced version of Dr. Carter's psychic focusing equipment. As the human ships opened fire on the Kethmori vessels, she reached out with her mind to locate the controlling intelligences. I can feel them, she said, her eyes closed in concentration. 3 main controllers, plus dozens of smaller minds, managing different groups of slaves. Target the main controllers first, Admiral Bishop's voice came through the communication system. Zarathes gathered her power and struck at the largest Kethmori consciousness. She felt it recoil in pain and surprise, but it did not break. These controllers were stronger than the ones she had fought before. They're adapting faster than we thought, she warned. This one has some kind of mental armor. Jake was piloting the ship closer to the enemy formation. Can you break through it? Yes, but it will take time and I can only focus on one at a time. Dr. Carter had an idea. What if we help you? You said human minds are naturally shielded. What if we could somehow channel your power through our defenses? It was a dangerous experiment, but they were running out of options. Dr. Carter, Tony, and Amy all placed their hands on Zarathes's shoulders while she maintained her mental attack. Something unexpected happened. Instead of Zarathes's power flowing through the humans, their natural mental barriers somehow amplified and focused her abilities. The combined effect was like turning a torch into a laser beam. The Kethmori controller's mental armor shattered under the focused assault. Instantly, dozens of controlled slaves on the enemy ships broke free of their mental chains. It worked, Amy shouted with excitement. The enemy ships are losing coordination. They moved from one Kethmori controller to the next using the same technique to free more and more of the enslaved beings. But with each victory, Zarathes could feel the remaining controllers adapting and strengthening their defenses. They're learning from each attack, she warned. Soon they'll find a way to block this technique too. Jake looked out at the stars where more enemy ships were appearing on the edge of the sensor range. Then we need to find their main base and end this war before they can adapt completely. Elder Silthan's voice came through the communication system with news that chilled everyone's blood. We have received reports from our deep space monitors. A massive Kethmori fleet is approaching Velthara Prime. Hundreds of ships, more than we have ever seen before. Zarathos felt her heart sink. They're done playing with us. This is their final attack. Dr. Carter checked the readings from their latest battle. But we've proven we can hurt them, if we can get close enough. The Kethmori fleet was massive beyond imagination. Hundreds of twisted ships filled the space around Velthara Prime like a swarm of metal insects. At the center of the formation was something that hurt to look at, a ship so large it could have been mistaken for a small moon, covered in spines and growths that pulsed with dark energy. Zarathos stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the enemy fleet through the main screen. The combined human Velthani forces looked tiny in comparison. They had less than 50 ships against an enemy that numbered in the hundreds. Sensor readings are off the scale, Tony reported from his engineering station. That command ship is generating more psychic energy than I thought was possible. Dr. Carter was monitoring Zarathos's vital signs as she extended her mental awareness toward the enemy fleet. I can feel them from here, Zarathos said, her voice tight with concentration. The main consciousness is on that big ship. It's ancient and powerful beyond anything I've faced before. Admiral Bishop's voice came through the communication system from the fleet command ship. All vessels, begin attack formation. We'll try to punch through their outer defenses and get Zarathos close enough to strike at their leadership. But before the Allied fleet could move, something unexpected happened. The space around Velthara Prime began to ripple like water. More Kethmori ships appeared, not dozens, but thousands. The enemy had been hiding the true size of their invasion force. Elder Silthan's panicked voice filled the communication channels. This is impossible. There are more ships than we have people on our entire world. Jake studied the tactical display with growing horror. It's not just an invasion, it's extermination. They're planning to control every single Velthani and then use them as soldiers for the next conquest. Zarathos felt the weight of despair settling over the Allied fleet. Even with her abilities, there was no way to fight so many enemies. But as she watched the massive enemy formation, she noticed something important. They're all connected, she said suddenly. Every ship, every controlled mind. They're all linked to the main consciousness on that command vessel. Dr. Carter looked up from her instruments. What does that mean? It means they made the same mistake they always make, Zarathos explained. They think bigger is always stronger. But if I can reach their central consciousness and destroy it, the entire fleet would lose coordination, Jake finished. But Zarathos, that ship is protected by hundreds of others. We can't get you close enough. Zarathos was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything she had learned over the past few weeks. The humans had taught her that her power was not a curse but a gift. They had shown her that she could touch other minds without destroying them. Most importantly, they had proven that she was not alone. I don't need to get close, she said finally. I can reach them from here. Amy looked shocked. That's impossible. The distance is too great, and their psychic defenses are too strong. Not if I use everything I have, Zarathos said quietly. If I put all my power into one attack, if I hold nothing back, I can break through any defense they have. Dr. Carter's face went pale as she understood what Zarathos was suggesting. That would kill you. Your mind can't handle that much power output. Maybe, Zarathos agreed, but my people will live, and the Kethmori will never threaten anyone. Again, Jake grabbed her arm gently. There has to be another way. We've come too far to lose you now. Zarathos looked at him with eyes full of love and sadness. Jake, you taught me that my power has a purpose. This is that purpose. This is why I was born different from my people. Before anyone could argue further, the Kethmori fleet began to move. The massive ships descended toward Velthara Prime like falling stars. On the planet's surface, billions of Velthani looked up at the approaching doom with no way to defend themselves. We're out of time. Admiral Bishop's voice came through the speakers. All ships begin final attack. Protect Zarathos as long as possible. The Allied fleet charged toward the enemy formation in a desperate last assault. Human and Velthani ships fought side by side, their weapons blazing against the overwhelming darkness. But for every Kethmori ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. Zarathus closed her eyes and began to gather her power. She felt her consciousness expanding, reaching out across the vast distance toward the enemy command ship. But as she built up energy for the attack, she felt something unexpected. "Doctor." Carter placed her hand on Zarathus's shoulder. "Wait, I have an idea." "Lisa, there's no time," Jake said urgently. "Remember what happened during our last battle?" Dr. Carter said quickly. "When we touched you during your attack, our mental defenses somehow amplified your power. What if we tried that again, but with more people?" Tony caught on immediately. "You mean use the entire crew as psychic amplifiers?" "Not just our crew," Amy added with growing excitement. "What about every human in the fleet? If they all focus their mental barriers the same way?" Zarathus felt hope stirring in her chest. "It might work. Human minds naturally resist psychic intrusion. If I could channel my power through that resistance..." Jake was already on the communication system. "All human ships, this is Captain Morrison. We need every human crew member to participate in a psychic link with Zarathus. Dr. Carter will explain the procedure." Over the next few minutes, as the space battle raged around them, Dr. Carter quickly taught hundreds of human soldiers and spacers how to create a mental network. It was unlike anything that had ever been attempted before. A voluntary psychic link between species that should not have been able to communicate telepathically. But it worked. As each human mind joined the network, Zarathus felt her power growing stronger and more focused. The chaotic, defended nature of human thoughts created a perfect lens for her abilities. "I can feel all of you," she said with wonder. "Your courage, your determination, your willingness to fight for people you've never met. You're giving me more than power. You're giving me purpose." The network expanded to include every human in the fleet. Soldiers, engineers, pilots, doctors, all of them linked their minds to Zarathus's cause. Through the connection, she could feel their memories and emotions. She saw their home worlds, their families, their dreams for the future. But she also felt something else. The Velthani, who had initially fled from her, were watching the battle from their planet's surface. As they saw humans willing to die for their world, some of them began to reach out mentally, asking to join the network. Elder Silthan's voice came through the communication system. "Zarathus, our people want to help. Can you link with us too?" It was risky. Velthani minds were much more vulnerable to psychic feedback than human minds. But as Zarathus felt the genuine desire of her people to stand with her, she carefully opened the network to include them. The result was beyond anything anyone had imagined. Human mental defenses provided protection, while Velthani telepathic abilities provided amplification. With thousands of minds supporting her, Zarathus felt her power grow to levels that should have been impossible. "Now," Jake said softly. Zarathus gathered all that combined strength and struck at the heart of the Kethmori fleet. Her attack was not just her own power now. It was the will of every human who refused to surrender, every Velthani who chose to fight for their freedom, and every being who believed that diversity was stronger than uniformity. The psychic lance that emerged from the Allied fleet cut through space like a sword of pure thought. It smashed through the Kethmori's defenses as if they were made of paper and struck directly at the ancient consciousness commanding the invasion. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then the enemy command ship began to glow with internal fire. Explosions rippled across its surface as the alien intelligence inside screamed in death agony across multiple dimensions. The effect on the rest of the fleet was immediate and total. As their controlling consciousness died, thousands of Kethmori ships went dark and lifeless. The enslaved beings aboard them began to wake up, confused but free. But the most amazing thing was that Zarathus survived. The network of human and Velthani minds had distributed the psychic feedback across so many people that no single mind was overloaded. She opened her eyes to find herself surrounded by friends who had shared her burden and made her stronger. "Is it over?" she asked weakly. Jake helped her stand up, his face bright with relief and pride. "It's over," The Kethmori are finished. Dr. Carter was checking the sensor readings with amazement. The freed slaves are already starting to organize themselves. Some of them are even asking for help getting home to their own worlds. Over the following days, the aftermath of the battle brought changes that no one had expected. The Velthani, who had always feared diversity and difference, began to see the value in having people like Zarathes among them. Other Velthani children, who showed unusual abilities, were no longer hidden away, but were trained and supported. The alliance between humans and Velthani grew into something permanent. The two species learned from each other, humans gaining deeper understanding of consciousness and emotion, while Velthani learned about courage and determination. But the biggest change was in Zarathes herself. She was no longer the frightened exile who had hidden from her own people. She became a teacher and protector, helping other dangerous individuals from Vari